Good morning, viewers. Welcome to this edition of Focus on Parliament. I am your host, Agather, Atuhaire, and we are glad that you join us every other week on this show where we discuss issues as they have happened in Parliament and analyze, and also maybe behind the scenes information that hasn't been in the rest of the dailies. And this week we mainly talk about the 7 bills that were passed in Parliament on Tuesday. What was the date on Tuesday? Must have been 30th. Tuesday, 30th of August. Then the reports that were tabled in Parliament also, which were about the state of indebtedness in this country by the Committee on National Economy, and also the state of the performance of the economy. We'll also briefly look at the issue of absenteeism in Parliament, which was raised by the Speaker after conducting a review of July and saw that MPs were not attending consistently in both committees and plenary House sittings. To discuss that and more, if time allows, I have a panel of members of Parliament and also a parliamentary reporter, analyst, and watchdog. I'll start from my left. I'll start with Honourable Omara from Otuke. Welcome to the show, Honourable.
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers.
The next is the lady who had disappeared from this show. She was at some point a regular, and she disappeared. You're welcome back, Honourable Obigah. Obigah is the woman MP for Terego district. Welcome to the show, Honourable.
Thank you. You missed one thing. I'm the most rural MP in the 11th Parliament.
We don't know that. You're always claiming, but we don't know. Does the rural come from Terego being the most rural place in this country?
No, we seem to be far
you
from
are the villager.
The rest of the country. Reasons, everything they say, it's all over the country. From Busia to Arua. Then you find them beyond. You know, I don't have a single tarmac.
Are you further from Koboko, for example?
Yeah, sure. On this side. Yeah, I'm away from electricity. I don't have anything called electricity. No tarmac, no nothing. I don't have ambulances. It's everything.
That's why you are in Parliament to advocate for We also have Timothy Chemonges, the head of Parliament Watch. Timothy, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you, Agatha, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for coming. Let's get right into it. I think we should start with the issue of the state of indebtedness in this country. The committee the report that the committee tabled in Parliament on Tuesday, the 30th, puts the debt currently at 78.7 trillion shillings. That's about $20.9 billion. And I think that's over 50% of GDP. But we have the economist, the finance guru here to help us with that. What does that say about our economy? And we know this from your Committee of Budget. We had seen it. But what does this exactly mean for our economy, that we have a debt growing at this rate?
Yeah, thank you very much. As you've said correctly, last week the Committee of National Economy made a presentation to Parliament on 2 issues. One was on the status of the economy as of June this year. That's the financial year 2021-2022. And then also the status of indebtedness of our country and the implications thereof. As you've noted also correctly, our total national debt is now 78.7 trillion, which is in US dollars, it's $20.9 billion. I would also want the viewers to note that the size of our GDP is $45 billion. So if you do 20.9 as a percentage of 45, the debt to GDP ratio becomes 48%. Now, if you look at the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, which also was approved by Parliament and the Budget Committee, it gives allowance for the financial year 2022-2023 for the debt to be accommodated at 53.1%, which means looking at it from a finance perspective, at 48%, it still looks like the debt is relatively fine and is still within the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. If you compare this with the, countries like Kenya, which is almost 78%, and then other countries. But I would also want the viewers to note that we have grown our GDP to $45 billion. One of which is because we rebased the GDP by 17% in, I think, around 2015.
We debased.
Yes, rebasing GDP means basically you have gotten a new base year so that it will give you a way where you can reprice for the future GDP. It's a more complicated finance matrix. But so we basically increased the denominator. So we now said with a new calculation, we have looked at this, we had not put it there as part of our GDP. Maybe that airport there, we have not included it here, that road. So we basically increased our base from $37.5 billion, which was actually our GDP about 5 years ago, now to $45 billion. Now, if you have just rebased it without really substantial increase in goods and services, it means you're lying to yourself. You basically, what you want to do is you increase the denominator so that even if the debt increases, it still falls down to a 48%. When in actual sense, your debt is far now above the 48. And this is why I would think it is so. Regardless of the growth in our debt, which is now 78.7 trillion, and now a percentage, 48% of our GDP, we have not seen a substantial growth in our revenue.
Yeah.
And so for over 5 years, our tax to GDP ratio is still muted, as remain at 13%. And that is a problem, because if we have received debt, we have secured a lot of debt into the country, and we have not seen commensurate growth in revenue, then there could be two problems. One could be that we have invested the money in non-revenue generating investments or enterprises. So that money is not generating revenue, because we should be collecting now much more. Because you bring money, you invest in money generating revenue, your revenue collection by URA should substantially grow as a percentage of GDP. It has remained 13%. And we are projecting to grow at 16%. It's still a projection. We don't know when we shall ever get there. And so what happens this year, we have in our budget, in terms of the revenue side of our budget, we said 25 trillion will be generated by URA. Remember, our total budget is 48.1 trillion.
Yeah.
Where would the rest of the other money come from? There is bilateral and multilateral donor money. And then the last one again is debt. You go into the market and borrow more. Either concessionary loans, or you go to money market, you go and borrow, which is very expensive, and it has its own consequences. So you cannot, as a strategy, continue to borrow money every year, year and out, when actually on the revenue side of your business, you're not generating more taxes. So you'll be trapped.
Why isn't this debt that we are getting resulting into growth of revenue?
That is why I'm saying is that we could have gotten the money and put it in a non-money generating area, or we have invested it in things that are, in terms of generating revenue, is long-term. Like, for example, we have borrowed for oil roads.
Yeah.
We have tarmac roads to Bulisa, and to Oima. Then let's ask ourselves, in the absence of oil, how much revenue are we getting from that zone? Because there the last time I read, we had taken over $3.8 billion for the oil investment alone, including all these roads. So when will we recover? And in calculating our GDP, there's what we call GDP without oil benefits, without oil revenue. So, which means that the roads we have done, very beautiful roads. Have you traveled on those roads up to Kingfisher? Amazing roads. But every time you travel, you don't see trucks bringing goods, agricultural materials to the center so that we sell more and generate more and more and more money. So that is one. You put something which will generate revenue long term, or you invested the money in areas that are not generating money at all. The last one is corruption and externalization of those funds. So sometimes we are given money, that money does not arrive here. So we are given money, the donor retains the money and just sends some people to come and do work on the ground here with their materials and whatever. So that money has not generated revenue. It's bought services here. So the money has stayed out. It's on our balance sheet. It's something that we must continue to pay back, and it's not generating revenue. And the problem now that we have, for me, is now a cash flow problem. Because you've projected that URA will collect 25 trillion. Now, your repayments, debt repayments, principal plus interest, we put in the budget, it's over 17 trillion. Now, subtract 17 from 25. You basically have 5 trillion to play around with. And that is actually your money. The rest are not your money. That's your cash. So, the problem I see is that because we have not been able to get even the loans we have got, 61%, by the way, is external loans. And then 39 is domestic. And domestic debt is very expensive because you're going into the money markets and you're going to get these loans very expensively at 16%. So what that would mean is that your interest component of the loan is huge, is growing. And it's always preferable that you have concessionary loans to be at 80% because some people lend you money at zero interest. So you just have to pay the principal back. But because of that now, we are going to have a big cash flow problems because we must meet our debt obligations. We must not default. And therefore means we must have the cash. And one of the conversations we were having with the ministers of finance was that, I think out of the 3.8 trillion, which they, is it 4.8 or 3.8 trillion, which they disburse in Q1, a good component of that also is debt, because we should not default. So your cash flow, which you're generating, you must make sure that your debt repayment is your priority. There is what we call the sovereign credit ratings of a country. A moment you default like this, the Moody's and all these other international agencies will say Uganda is a very risky country. So they downgrade you. So a moment they downgrade you, any investor who is coming to give you money will basically price its money in a very high interest rates. So the problem we have is, as much as we can argue from the Ministry of Finance that our debt to GDP ratio on the numbers is 48%, we are finding real difficulty in managing our cash flows because we don't actually have that money to even pay our debt, our debts plus interest, leave alone now fund our own budgetary lines. So under the charter, we still have to reach 53.1%. The question is, when you borrow, it is presumed that the money will come and be in the economy, generate more revenue, so that you collect more taxes. So instead of collecting 25, what about if we had collected 35 trillion or 30 trillion? Then we, over a period of time, we would actually be clawing back on debt. We are paying the ones that is existing, our revenue is growing, and we are actually now less debt, and we reach to a point where we can actually even settle our total national debt on the account of the revenue we're generating. So I think the challenge to the economists and to the leaders outside there is that for over these years, where have we put the debt money, which in my view has failed to generate revenue.
The revenue.
Yes, that's the big monkey, elephant in the room.
Thank you, Honourable. I have so many follow-up questions from you. I'll get back to you. But one of the follow-up questions I'll ask Honourable Obigah, who is here the representative of the NRM party and in charge of investing this debt, or this debt we accumulate.
Yeah.
While Honourable Omara says the debt is still within manageable, that one could say that at 48% of the GDP, the rate at which it is growing is alarming. For example, in the last 5 years, it has grown by over 34 trillion.
Yeah.
What is that worrying the government at all, that we should really maybe slow down on borrowing?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say one thing which my brother Omara didn't maybe say is the fact that the way the money that is borrowed is being spent. First of all, the projections are really exorbitant. They're too high. For example, something that could be constructed with the 4 billion, the projection can be 20 billion. So this again increases on the debt of the country. Yeah, after realizing such a problem, we want to be in the second class. We're still in third world. Yeah. So how do we move here if we have very high debt rates? We cannot. Definitely, the government has to find a solution by saying we should slow down borrowing. But most importantly, this high libido for money by government officials and politicians, unless we become patriotic and do the right things at the right time, well, you're bound to move nowhere. A lot of mess. If we have to do, instead of repatriating the profits, if we have to do local content, then we should start it. We should appreciate what is within the country. But if we do not go for local content, definitely we cannot. We'll be talking here. Yes, government wishes to reduce on borrowing, but how does it progress without really addressing the real issues? The bank rates are too high for people to borrow and invest. And you'll see there's a lot of amenities given to investors that have come from outside the country. But what have we done for the local investors? If you look at climate change issues, these so-called investors are building in the wetlands. But now here you find RBCs are busy beating the local people, just a small section of it. If we have to really see that we address challenges and problems of Uganda, we have to go indiscriminately. Whether foreign or local, get out of the wetlands. Let's do the right thing. Let's have the local content. Let's reduce on the loan rates. In Uganda, for you to prosper, it's a nightmare. Because who has that money that you will not pay loan? And if you pick the loan, you're actually working for the bank. So there must be a deliberate move by the government to see how we work and improve the local content. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tim, you have been covering Parliament over the years. When this, the requests to borrow come to Parliament, what has been the trend? Because if we are talking about debts that are becoming unsustainable and Parliament is busy approving, what role is Parliament playing in this?
So thank you, Agatha. I think that part of the role of Parliament is really to facilitate how the government operates. And that part of it is on ensuring that if there are other additional funds through borrowing, that is facilitated. And then also comes the responsibility of ensuring that it is within the manageable realm. And that money is well utilized. looking at that report of the report of the committee, a number of things are highlighted, and Honourable here has mentioned them. The disparity between the growth of the GDP and the increasing growth of our indebtedness, our continued reliance on you find banks. The government is equally competing with the citizens to borrow domestically. So currently our domestic borrowing, I think the government stands at around 30%, which affects the private sector in terms of access of the money. And ideally, what you want is to increase the base in which where you can get more revenue so that it can facilitate. But importantly, I think one of the things that we agree is that debt we can get debt. However, it is in how we use and manage that money. And I think that we've not fared so well there, to the extent that you have loans which are you get a loan and even you've not planned for the same. The loan comes and it starts accruing the interest and you're not utilizing the same. You have corruption on the same. You have the current setting is the chunks of the money goes into infrastructure, and so you don't realize the benefit immediately, which is long term, and then it affects how the budget runs. So to that extent, I think that Parliament has a responsibility to ensure that even when we are getting the loans, they are well utilized. They are within the cap which the law. But also more importantly, if you look at that report locally, they are what the committee is referring to as domestic areas, which is growing at a very high rate, to the extent that even those people who are offering you services and goods, they are not being paid. And ideally, you expect the GDP to grow. So those are some of the things that are affecting how the operations of the growth of the economy, but also the expenditure on the same. Yeah.
The economists that we have here, my question again is on you as an economist, but also you as a member of Parliament.
Yeah.
So we have seen here that one of the reasons that the debt growth is not corresponding with revenue growth or economic growth is investment. We are probably investing in the wrong things, but also corruption and lack of value for money. My first question is, how is, in terms of infrastructure, who has been advising government to invest in infrastructure, if and why? Why isn't the infrastructure they have invested in? Because now we have more roads, we have more electricity. Why hasn't that resulted into growth in revenue or economic growth? I think the next part of the question I'll ask Honourable Obigah.
Let me say this. The investment choices, for example, in the building, power generation investments, the roads infrastructure, are actually a great choice. And we have been doing this for many years, for the last 37 years, right? If you look at the agenda of the president right now, there are 4 strategic outlook. One is agro-industrialization, commercial agriculture, ITC, and services. Now, these are where, if you tackle correctly, you will generate revenue. Okay, if the infrastructure is there, power is there, then we need to create the factories. We have more factories to generate, first of all, value addition in terms of the items that we are producing, so that we can manufacture, domesticate what we have been importing, like sugar, milk, oil seeds, cooking oil, name it, rice, etc., etc. But the challenge, though, is that it is the private sector that should really generate this growth. Government just creates an enabling environment, making sure there is security, there is infrastructure in place. But if you look at also the banks, the cost of money, my brother here has mentioned, the cost of money at 16, 17, 21% is the highest. In Europe, why they grow is you find interest rate is 1%, 2%, point something percent. And therefore, the private sector is able to go and get affordable credit, long-term money for long-term investments. But here, commercial banks give rates very, very high, 15, 16, 20, up to 21%, or sometimes 22. It is punitive on anybody who is trying to manufacture something. Then you come to government. I have been a very big advocate that government should put more money at microfinance support center, put more money at housing finance, put more money at UDB, so the private sector can really go and have affordable credit. So even some of the money, I'm only happy that it only happened once during the time of COVID, when we got COVID money. We were able to give UDB about 589 billion, and then microfinance support about 100 billion. But you see, that's a drop in the ocean. So you can have all this robust infrastructure, but how then do you make sure the economy is generating revenue? Can government partner with the private sector to just making sure that there is the capital that they need is there? And if you don't want to co-invest through UDC in terms of equity holding in some of the private enterprises, then put more money at the bank, at this bank, so that even SMEs can go to microfinance support center to get money, and then they can be active, and then more big money at UDB. So I see, how do I call it? Lack of aggression. That's why the issue I was saying, where do we locate our money? So you find that the money has come, instead of saying, okay, let's generate wealth. Where do we need to put money? That conversation, we are hardly having that conversation. People, when money comes, they want to grab it, and where they want to grab and take it. So me, I'm an advocate that let's give our banks more money so that private sector can go and get cheap capital and long-term capital, because private sector is the one that will generate. Government can also get involved through UDC and have equity holding in some of the companies. We have done that, although it still remains controversial with Atuhaire, where government put some money there. We have a 40% holding in Atuhaire. And so if we can have more sugar, domesticated sugar, coffee, tea, fish, oil seeds, rice, things that we manufacture and export and get value, it would be something that will make us move forward. I need to mention a few things why also we have trouble with our debt. One of them is what we call the unutilized funds. So these funds come, and then because maybe the condition was for us to have counter funding by government, so this money arrive and we are not ready. We don't have the corresponding counter fund to put in. Maybe the donor said, we'll give you 80%, you put your 20.
Yes.
Now we fail to put the 20. And then this money comes and sits here. It's not generating revenue. It's earning interest. And then you wonder, why do officials come for loans when actually we are not ready, and fail even to prioritize the counter funding? That's one big problem.
And that's why we keep paying commitment fees.
Yes, we pay commitment fees. We actually pay interest. The moment now, the person you've signed, I'm a banker, the moment you sign and say the money is now made available to you, the drawdown is yours.
Even if it stays.
Yes, we have given you money. We have now, because we have signed and we have committed the money to you, we are not giving any money. Now this money here has a cost to it. It is now your monkey. You have it. So you now fail to utilize it. The burden is yours. It's actually seated maybe with the Bank of Uganda. But now we have failed to get the counter funding. Then the money sits there, and the owners are earning money on us.
Or sometimes we have failed to start work on the project.
We have failed to start work on the project.
Procurement,
the procurement problems. So there are many missing parts. That is where now, if I were the president, I would really cause trouble. Because you are now making the little revenue I'm collecting to be used to pay for a loan which is not generating revenue. And then the one also, which we must note, is another monkey called contingent liabilities. This is where our government guarantees some projects. Said, okay, Omara, you want to do that? Okay, government will provide a guarantee for somebody to undertake a project. But at time T, when now that there's a call on that facility, then it becomes debt. For example, like the one that the president normally directs and said, okay, somebody, you want to build roads? He writes, he said, Honourable, not Honourable, E.D. Kajina, please work out with so and so. These people have money, they want to do that road. Uganda doesn't have money, let them come with their own money, do the road. But after a certain period of time, when now it's completed, that thing, the burden now falls on us. It's a contingent liability, but it will automatically become debt. So such issues also should now normally come through the Committee of National Economy, then eventually to budget for us to see it. Not for some people just to work outside there. So there are several of those that have not been brought into the jar, the cooking jar, the 48% of GDP. Actually, it's 48.9, call it 49%. It has not come into the cooking, the kit. So those contingent liabilities, we have asked the Minister of Finance, please come and let's see what quantum is it, which one are most likely to fall onto the actual debt. That will increase our debt burden. So that is also another area which should not be abused, because in the actual sense, it's a burden, is a debt burden to the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Honourable Rose Obigah, I believe that when they bring these debt borrowing requests to Parliament, one of the things, it's not just for Parliament to approve. The Constitution gives it power in that way. And you mentioned the reasons we are in where we are, and we might get worse tomorrow. One of them being corruption, one of them being where we are investing, where we are not getting enough back. Why isn't Parliament making sure that before allowing a loan request, before approving it, it has asked these questions of the previous loans and the projects they were supposed to do? Or it has got people like the alternative finance minister here to advise to advise them on the best areas. In essence, what I'm asking is Parliament really playing its role in terms of making sure that we are borrowing prudently, and after we have borrowed, we are using that money the way we are supposed to use it?
Thank you. I just want to say the 11th Parliament is a focused Parliament. We might have erred in one or two ways, but so far so good. This bandwagon of the eyes have it. I want to quote the Rocco case. It's an embarrassment. If you go to the handset, everyone said nay. But the deputy speaker ruled the eyes.
I have
it.
gone to the Hansard, and that's not what was captured in the They put
whoever doctored will never see heaven. That person should never see heaven. I want to be honest on this. So definitely, that's why I say Ugandans need to sober up. Uganda belongs to all of us. And Uganda is enough for all of us. If we decide to do the right thing, if we can improve the lives of the most rural person, like me, those Teregians there, the Karamajongs, in this era, to hear Chemonges is still dying of hunger, to hear people of Terego are malnourished, is that an embarrassment? So we need to refocus and re-energize. A lot of documents are in Parliament coffers. But when it comes to implementation, I think some things wrong goes in these ministries. When it comes to borrowing, you will see Ministry of Finance, the minister is in high gear. But implementation, they have again decided to localize the theft. I would say this, I don't believe in the way the so-called Paris development model is going to help Ugandans come out of poverty. I'm here watching because I have villages, parishes that have 20 villages, 20. And each village has not less than 300 people. Others are 430, 380, 360. Now, that parish gets 100 million. Instead of 100 million, Parliament approves 100 million. What arrives is 7 million. Sincerely. What is this about to do? Isn't this now localizing theft? They have not got another way.
Have they localized it? Because if only 7 is getting to the parish, it means 93 is being eaten here.
From 100, then they said what will reach there will be 17. What arrives is what? 7. So everywhere on the way, there is a Ugandan or some Ugandans who have positioned themselves to eat indiscriminately. They eat the cover, they eat the real fruit, they eat even the seed. This is embarrassing, really embarrassing. So therefore, the current parliament does its work. But when it comes to implementation, people are not interested.
But you have a duty to play an oversight role on
I,
that.
I just want to provide some information to my honourable colleague. The reason which you ask, the question that you ask and said, where is the money going? Where are we locating these monies? Now, this, the executive, the Minister of Finance, have not allocated money in this financial year, the budget financial year, development expenditure funding. Now, one of them, in my view, is what my sister is talking about, which is PDM. PDM money is only 1,059 billion. Out of that 48.1 budget that we are talking about, 48.1 trillion, PDM is only 1,059 billion. Now, we saw in the releases, PDM money was not released. We are now in season 2 of agriculture. Now, we ask finance, what is happening? And there was rumors that, as she was saying, that money has been cut. That only 25 million will be given to the parishes. So the Minister
Instead of 100.
Instead of 100. So the Minister of Finance said for Economic Planning and Development, Minister Lugolobi, came and said they will release 25 million in Q1. Then they will release 50 in Q2 and release 25 in Q3. But I just want to emphasize what she's saying. The information I'm providing is that if you want the economy to grow and generate revenue and help the people Terego and the rest of the parishes in Uganda, what in the world would you release PDM money in batches, small amounts, 25 million? You are doing it, spreading it over how do I call it, 9 months or so. Why don't you give that money now? Because we are talking about generating wealth. Give that 1,059 billion now to the farmers. Let the farmers go generate wealth so that we can prop up the economy. If you release it late, so we the finance people will say the impact of that money will not be realized in the financial year. It will take time. So this is the lack of seriousness that we see in terms of those who have the control of the money. They are not willing to let that money go where it is going to transform lives. But you'll find money has been taken and put in something that does not affect, is not, you know, like Rocco, for example, where the money is going in Rocco. Now, what? Rocco is a private enterprise, but we can have money going to the population. Yes.
When Gaga has not even been helped. There are so many private business persons who have collapsed. Why choose only Rocco? Why don't you pick Gaga, who serves up to northern Uganda, this side, or West Nile, and then you only pick Rocco? And before even we can have the next sitting, the money is already given to Rocco. Don't you see?
Has the money been given to Rocco?
The clandestine movement.
Has there been a supplementary?
Whatever is in
no, Rocco's conversation, I sit in finance, also in budget committee. The Rocco's money, our consideration was that the money for Rocco will come in the financial year 2023, 2024. And it's going to be part of the budget money. We will fund it from our own
So you're the ones who localized also this kind of taking money for irrelevant activities.
No, it was not an agreement.
I did not sign that thing of Rocco. I gave my very compelling reasons.
But we attacked him here and said he was a coward and he didn't sign even the minority report.
I did not sign the main report and the minority report because my strong view was that we should buy Rocco. Hey, there's no problem for us to give money to Rocco, but let us own this damn thing. Yes.
So me, I was looking at the UPDF, the construction section.
Yes.
If at all we want to have something that can do government work and do it thorough, we have seen how much UPDF has done. It would have been better to give that money of Rocco to UPDF, get them all the machinery, so that they would work better, other than putting money to a private entity. What would be the benefit? UPDF, it could be controlled. In case something happens, we have a track of it. Anyway, that one has gone.
Rocco will remain controversial.
It can go to hell.
Whatever happens with Rocco, it will remain controversial.
To me, from my side, it can go to hell. But anyway,
It will remain controversial because you people have sat on it. The motion to have it revisited has been sat on in Parliament. So at the end of the day, it, by the way, begins and ends with Parliament.
With Parliament, yes.
But even what we are talking about here now, Honourable Rose, what I was asking is, if Parliament would scrutinize these loan requests and ask the hard questions of where did the money from the previous loans go? Was it used appropriately? Or why are we funding this, yet what would make economic sense would be funding this other thing? And that's a role of Parliament, which is where the lamenting, and MPs do that all the time. Oh, the debt is getting unsustainable, but they keep approving. They keep approving.
We have a record from the time this 11th Parliament started. At least you will exonerate us for 1 or 2, 3 times when we stood our ground and said this, no, it cannot go this way. But nevertheless,
we stopped Penetti. We've stopped this.
Are you sure you stopped Penetti?
The president still insists he wants it done. But
because apparently you people gave the president a different report that they had recommended review, yet the committee had actually said terminate. So that's where the problem
whoever
is.
said review or what, I'll wait for it on the floor of Parliament. I'm not part of that committee. But again, you see, you did mention that we have an oversight role. True. But do you know our fuel price is less than half of what the actual price is. The petroleum product on market in this country has become too expensive. Driving from here to Terego, I take not less than 11 hours. Now you see, if I am to do that every other weekend, where do I find the fuel?
They increased your fuel allowance.
Who increased? Is there any fuel? Where is the report? Timothy,
can you please help me? Wasn't that 190 billion that they added to their budget supposed to increase the fuel allowance? Part of it, committee travels increase.
The committee travel. I want to. Timothy is going to come. I want to tell you the money given for committee oversight role, research, and so forth. I can really assure you, it cannot do effective work. It is a drop in the ocean. Like if
Parliament has no money.
Parliament has no money. The travel Human Rights Committee can make. Only 10 of us will travel because I'm the best performer in attendance. I attended more than the committee chair.
We are coming to attendance.
So the money is a drop in the ocean. We can, by the way, the salary for a member of parliament in Kenya, 2 months salary, pays me a whole year. So this is the parliament we are crucifying for eating money. Yet Kenya just 2 months salary of Kenya pays me a whole year.
Timothy, let me bring in Timothy before we take a break, and we're going to get back to that. So Tim, the report, one of the things the report says about where the borrowing is going is infrastructure, but the one that caught my eye was investing in key other sectors like environment. We have been having these issues of environment. They are more on the social media than anywhere else. For example, in Munyonyo, both in Munyonyo and in Bunga, that wetland, they have been feeding it with sand. And people have been asking, apparently there's even security guarding that activity. How are we performing if we are saying we are investing in environment and we're being dishonest with the wetlands that have been taken away? The forest cover is now less than 10%, for example. Yeah,
I think, Agatha, that as a country, we as far as the recommendations of the committee are concerned, so there seems to be a missing gap between the two, the recommendations and the implementation. But also I think there seems to be either Parliament is reluctant or they may not be aware that they still hold the stick, that there has to be, we have to demand that even when you come for the money, you have to account for this. A couple of weeks I saw the Speaker directing the Committee on National Economy to look into all the loans that we've since borrowed and their performance. And that followed the loan about the Karamoja, the funding of some of the activities within Karamoja. And so the Speaker directed that kindly go ahead and peruse through all the loans that we've borrowed and how far that has gone to. Because I think that there seems to be also, if they're not given keen eye, there are a lot of things that pass. And so even with this, the Finance Committee and the committees at Parliament, they have to continue demanding that even when you come for the money of the current budget cycle, a report of the performance of each of those loans that we passed must be given before we give you more money. Two, and that also cuts across on all other recommendations by committees. You have a committee on human rights making very serious recommendations. The next cycle for money comes and you pass the money without demanding for accountability of the implementation of those recommendations. I think Parliament has to insist on that.
Okay.
And sometimes it appears in abstract, but if we insist on that, the implementation of the same will be actualized. And so Parliament holds the stick. You imagine you have experts like Honourable here.
Yes.
They take time, they undertake
The incoming finance minister.
They do brilliant reports. A lot of resources have been put in place.
Appointed by who?
In the next government, which will not be her NRM.
My government, for anyone to remove over my dead body.
So Agatha, I think that the country gets a raw deal to the extent that we invest a lot of resources, and we have experts at Parliament. And I had mentioned earlier that this Parliament has performed fairly well so far. It has one of the best. It's one of the most educated parliaments. You have fairly experienced individuals to whom we give the time and resources to ensure that they undertake.
They are complaining that the resources are not enough.
Yeah, and they may not be enough. They will never
but
be
we're
enough.
doing the work.
But they're doing the work. But then that has to be insisted that as we make recommendations after conducting all this oversight work, even before we disburse any other money in the subsequent, you can't come for a supplementary budget and you fail to implement some of the recommendations that we have. Look at this report. You have the committee recommending that government reduces its appetite of domestic borrowing, which is affecting the performance of the private sector and those of us who would want to borrow. So the same, so that's one of those, the aspects to do with domestic areas. So you'll see finance come next year to request for budget, for money, and that will pass, and those recommendations have been
exactly.
That
will be a problem.
You have issues to do with the climate change.
To ban indictment on Parliament.
So it is unless Parliament insists on the same, we are likely to get a road deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to respond to any of the things we were talking about?
No.
When you took notes?
Yeah, but me, I want to say something about environment.
Get
Honestly, my heart leaps when I just hear the forest cover is 1% and people are still filling the wetlands with sand. But my conviction is where water has ever passed, Whether you fill it with sand or you fill it with stones, whether you do what, one day water will pass there. And once water passes there, the cry comes. So really, Parliament has passed a policy, has given a recommendation, then implementation is for the technocrat, is for the executive. Now, if they pay deaf ear, we are not going to stop there. It's coming back. There's a time, the speaker, people move motions, question time to the prime ministers, and so forth. For me, it is not late. But what I've decided to do for my people of Terego, every year, I put it upon myself to give not less than 500,000 seedlings. And indeed, I signed an agreement with the local person that I will look after these seedlings. I will do drip irrigation. If I lose any seedling, I'll refill it before Honourable comes. If I'm not able to do this, I don't pick the seedlings. And people are picking. So if every MP got challenged and say, let me do the Kenyan way, every homestead should have not less than 200 trees in 5 years. I want to tell you, Uganda will get green again.
Thank you, Honourable.
Agatha, there's maybe the one more regarding the economy on the report of the committee. So the report also indicates that the economy will be, the growth in the economy will be affected. We are projected to our GDP to grow by 4.6%, and from where we are coming, the COVID situation affected our growth in the last financial year and the other, and also the global financial crisis in 2008 from there, and then later on the COVID. So that has affected our economy going forward. Now, the key ingredient, though, is how are we going to manage the post-COVID economy going forward?
So that COVID also doesn't become another excuse, like it's time.
Exactly. COVID has not made us to grow. So now, the challenge that we have been having with the leaders who are managing our economy, especially from the Minister of Finance, is their treatment of the current macroeconomic environment indices.
Yes.
I pick one, which is inflation. So in the past, remember, people made a lot of noise on inflation, prices are high and so forth. Now, the inflation is managed by Bank of Uganda using monetary policies, which mainly are the debt instruments, using treasury bills and bonds, and then also the central bank lending rate, which is CBR. So Bank of Uganda has done very well in managing that, increasing its lending rate, to commercial banks and so forth, and sapping out money from the economy using those instruments. And something which I recommended, before we reach the barrier, the inflationary barrier of 5%. We said after we've touched 5%, we've touched 6%, then Bank of Uganda will begin to react. And they have done well. Our main problem now is that the government has brought in the fiscal policy. And their excuse is inflation. Inflation. Now, my argument is that you cannot have your cake and eat it. You cannot drive to control inflation and also at the same time achieve economic growth, especially when you now bring in the fiscal instruments. What has happened, Agatha and viewers, is that the Ministry of Finance cut down public expenditure intentionally to reduce money supply. Everybody is looking at money supply. Bank of Uganda is sucking in money using debt instruments, making it very difficult for private sector to borrow by increasing the lending rate. And then on this side, government is saying, no, we are not spending, cutting down spending. Now, for me, I say as an economist, that is a disaster. You cannot be very aggressive using those policy instruments to control inflation, because inflation is actually a one-digit figure. It's about 7.6% or thereabout. We call it a one-digit inflation. It's still below 10%, which is manageable. So let Bank of Uganda do its work to manage inflation, but as government to reboot the economy, you need to provide the expenditures we are talking about, like what my sister has been referring to under the PDM. Put that money there. Leave inflation to Bank of Uganda, because we need to reboot the economy. We need to regenerate so that it makes money for us. So that is why we invited the Minister of Finance to come and indicate to us how much money they released in Q1 and what was it for. And what is it, why is it that they are not funding key budget expenditure lines, including the capital investment agenda? And I think now they have actually came trembling, saying we are going to release money quickly so that the economy can work. The question is, who are the advisors in the Ministry of Finance? Who are the economic advisors of the president? So this is the question I ask, because you cannot do that and expecting growth to achieve growth, certain growth targets, when you are behaving in a very responsible way. Yes. So that's my comments on those ones.
Thank you.
The advisors are called fishermen.
Not my words. And women.
Let's take a short commercial break. When we return, we'll look at the financial bills that were passed
The women who
this
are
week,
brains.
and also the issue of absenteeism. We'll be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you for staying with us. We're glad you stay with us. And I'm here with Honourable Omara from Otuke County, Honourable Obigah from Terego, and Timothy Chemonges from Parliament Watch. And we're talking about the state of the economy, the state of indebtedness, and also now we want to look at the bills, the financial bills that were passed in Parliament on Tuesday. These bills, which include anti-money laundering, the Companies Amendment Act, the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill, Partnerships Amendment Bill, Cooperatives, Insolvency, were introduced in the House on the 30th. On the 23rd of August, and they were passed on the 30th in record about 2-3 hours. And there have been questions about which were raised. Some of them were raised in the House by Honourable Chemonges, and there have been concerns of the stampede about that. And these bills are mainly for Uganda's obligations towards the Financial Action Task Force. Honourable Mara, you are the finance expert here. These concerns of the people that these bills were not given enough time, and both at committee level, but also the debate in the House. I saw when Honourable Chemonges raised it, he was told that it's okay, whoever wants to go to court can go to court. but for you, when you look at those bills, do they, the quality-wise, do they serve the purpose that they are? I mean, do they meet that standard?
Okay.
Yes.
Here is the background.
Yeah.
Let me first start by saying that I supported the quick escalation of the processing and approval of these bills. And this is why. As you all know, the Financial Action Task Force, which is basically an international agency which is empowered to provide compliance standards regarding anti-money laundering, standards, targets, monitoring, basically compliance around it, around terrorism financing, and the third one is weapon of mass destruction, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. And those laws, there are some countries, most of the countries are signatory to it. And in the world, in the entire world, 3 countries have already been put on the gray list. On the gray list means you have complied with some of the standards and targets, but in the main you have also not complied with the many. So now, in the world, we were amongst the 3 countries, only 3 countries that were marked gray. The rest are green or blue. And then there are 2 countries that are already in the blacklist. And I want to mention them. Those 2 countries are Iran and North Korea. Now, when you are on the blacklist, it means that you are cut from the world financial system. On SWIFT and whatever, you cannot send money or receive it, send money to or receive money from any country. So that would be completely bad for Uganda. Not any country will deal with you on any form of support. And yet now we are on the boundary of falling there to join North Korea. Can you hear the name? North Korea,
Iran,
and Iran. Those are on the blacklist. Now, the countries that were with us on the gray list, do you know who they are?
No.
Cambodia and Myanmar. Myanmar or whatever. Myanmar and Cambodia. We were now the 3rd. So we were all put in a big sense of trepidation. Me as a banker, I just realized we are in a big problem because our delegation from the Financial Intelligence Unit, from the Attorney General's office, from the Ministry of Finance, all the regulators, the Bank of Uganda, we are now getting ready to go and have a meeting with Financial Action Task Force teams and to present to that team. Remember, they had reviewed us before. They had reviewed us before, and this was now like almost our last chance to plead our case, whether we had complied with what we have been given 2 years ago. And we had tried on some, we had 42, now we are having about, I think, 23 remaining conditions that we had not fulfilled. And one of them was the various bills that you've seen that we have passed. For example, they want matters of terrorism to be criminalized in our law. So that when you get a terrorist, there is something that you have to do. They wanted the persons who are doing business to be really identified and you can verify and find out. And that's why some of these cooperative laws and whatever needed to be strengthened so that when they come and they say, okay, Omara did a transaction there and he moved there. So where is Omara? Where is he located? Who are the directors of that company? And so on and so forth. So all these amendments that we did was to respond to some of the things that we had not ticked. So some of the blocks that we had to tick. So personally, I was worried. I stood, when the speaker talked, I stood up to respond to the speaker's communications. And I urged my colleagues and I said, if there is any time in our history where we should work so hard and burn night candles to finish this bill and accelerate it, because you just imagine, Agatha, you wake up tomorrow because of incompetence of some people. You reach a point where this country now joins Iran and North Korea on the blacklist. And then the IMF will now actually say, we can't touch you. World Bank, we can't touch you. International banks, which are domiciled here, will be forced not to touch us, not to do any transaction with us. And that is how grave this matter was. Let me add one important thing. We ran and we said, we are going to do all these things, burn night candles. In the finance committee, we received a couple of them, and other committees handled various aspects of it. But the big question that we ask, and they said when a person is down, you should not continue to beat them. I raised my voice during the omnibus committee, which we were, because the first time committee, that was what Honourable Chemonges was raising. The number of committees merged into one. So he said, what kind of committee is this one? It's not in our rules of procedure of parliament. Now, but I raised my voice there and I said, okay, we are going to do this. But you guys had 2 years. 2 years to really look into this thing. There are people who are paid in these government departments, in the Ministry of Finance, in Attorney General's office, wherever they are, to really deal with this matter. But now you wait when it's actually a few days and you stampede all of us to run and do this thing. So we were unhappy about it. But the Attorney General apologized as the leader of the delegation, or leading the cabinet side. So we said it's fine, but really never again should something like this happen.
Okay, so my question.
Yes.
Did that affect, in your view, the quality of the bills, or you think?
It did not affect the quality of the bill, because some of these things was about, like there's certain, in the UN Convention, which is law around some of these principles. It's just a matter of copying and pasting it into our laws. So that now with that in our law, it qualifies, or what is the best word for it? It cures the lacuna which was there. So it was more around copying and pasting, and then with limited debates and making sure that it's succinct and it responds to the issues which was at hand. So it did not affect the quality. The only thing which Honourable Chemonges was raising was saying we should have open rooms for different parties to come, as we normally do in committees. Consultation for people to come, and some of the provision, the amendments that we wanted was one line. You just copy that provision of the law as advised by FATCA, that Financial Action Task Force, and in some of the international bodies, agencies, which would actually make us comply with Anti-Terrorism Act, law rather. So we just plug in and plug there.
Okay.
So I don't think, even if we had broadened and prolonged the conversation, there was going to be much value that would be added, apart from making sure that the provision of the law was taken care of. Okay. The only monkey in the room that for me was unacceptable was people sleeping on the job. To sleep on the job, and you wait until the last moment and you make all of us to look bad. And even the speaker, now that's why even the Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy Speaker Terego said, guys, we must deal with this matter. And personally, knowing what I know, I've been there for a while. If you've gone into the blacklist, getting you out of that place is very difficult. It's very difficult.
Okay, so what Honourable Omara is saying, that this happened because of the urgency, but of the urgency of the matter. But Honourable Rose, I don't think that's entirely true, because we have seen that the style of this parliament, the 11th parliament, is, because even the speaker bragged about it and said, I've ever passed a bill in 15 minutes. What are you talking about? But when you look at those bills, I have read most of the reports of the bills, and there's a very uniform feature that the committee reports are saying we did not consult enough. We did not have enough time. We did not make enough consultations. I can say that about the mining and minerals bill, the ECOP, the electricity bill, even including your these ad hoc committees.
Yes.
And consultations is key. Laws have been nullified before over consultations, and courts have pronounced themselves on that. What is is it the style of parliament that let's rush through? Is it too much work? Because I don't think it is too much work. You people have been on recess, like an abrupt recess for the last 3 days, because there wasn't much business to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Does it worry you that maybe it might affect the quality of laws we end up with?
Thank you. I sit on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, and it's not a big deal to ban the night candles. And honestly, the bills which were given to us were thoroughly done, no problem. And I really want to emphasize here that the work of Parliament, basically, when it comes to bills, is done at committee level. You have to go word by word. You have to check your colleague. You have to check each other. You have to ask questions. Semuju is a committee member. Unfortunately, he misses a lot. He's not interested in committee work. He's interested in appearing in plenary. Maybe he has his issues because committee work is not taken into.
Is he a member of your committee?
Yes, legal. Much as he's not a lawyer, we have a few people who are not lawyers there. But the truth is, there are people, when it comes to nitty-gritties, they're not interested. They want to run to the other side. No, this was a must-do. And we were really getting off the line. Passing it now is not an issue because we have done the kitchen work. And if the speaker says that there is when we passed the bills in 15 minutes, it's because the people must learn to be in the committees. At times you find, there was a time I was alone for almost 5 hours. There are moments when I chair the committee. I'm not a committee chairperson, but at least in my history now, less than 2 years, I've chaired committee 3 times. So whatever happens to MPs, honestly, is a nightmare. But we do thorough job. And the chairpersons of our committees are so important. They coerce us, do like this. And because we have so many lawyers in Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, really you find it as an obligation to do the right thing for your country, because it's an embarrassment anyway when it goes to the public domain that this came from, honestly, the brains that are seen in Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. So honestly, it's the right thing. Whatever has gone out there, however it was passed well. There is no worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim, you observe these proceedings and you have the institutional memory to be able to compare now and before. Are we looking at a parliament that is caring more about quantity than quality? Because I'm looking at the statistics now.
Still insist.
I'm asking someone outside. For you, I can't. Because they have passed 11 bills so far since the second session began, which began in June, and 11 resolutions and so many other things. So is it an issue that they want to really do more, regardless of whether this is done qualitatively, or are they efficient enough to achieve both?
So, Agatha, this second session, the target is really 62, at least from the government. The target is 62 and 11, so that means 49 to go. And looking at the rules of parliament, the rules of procedure, really, I think
51 to go.
51 to go.
Yeah.
I think it gives an environment where the committees can be able to scrutinize some of these bills. And in the event that even the time is out, the same rules allows you to come and seek for an extension of time, for which I saw what the health committee requesting for more time to consider the organ and human relations transfer.
Yes.
Yeah, to the extent that it needs more stakeholders to weigh on it. But and actually, I was just telling you before the show that the rules of procedure allows for the second reading, for a motion to be moved to skip the committee stage, and you can still move direct to third reading.
Yes.
The same rules provides for that. And to the extent...
Under what circumstances?
And those are under exceptional circumstances, where there is probably
where urgency. Maybe there's an issue like that, what Honourable Omara was explaining.
Yes, so those are some of the exceptional circumstances. It's not hinged on one thing. And so in those exceptional, the rules envisage such things. But to the extent that this 11th Parliament, I think the number of bills that have been passed, there has not been issue on the procedure. It is, of course, there are concerns from members, but if you compare it with, say, the 10th Parliament and the 9th Parliament, I think the time is small to really determine to give a comparative analysis. But so far, I would say that there is compliance.
Well, quantitatively, you can
Quantitatively,
tell that this parliament is moving
Yeah,
frightening. For that I know. For qualitatively, maybe we might need an expert to analyze the laws that have been passed for us to.
Even you as a lawyer, haven't you gone through the bills? Yeah, you have all copies. Are you not satisfied, really? Okay.
No, I am not quite.
What is your point of grievance?
No, because you see, and that's why I talked about consultations. There are bills where adequate consultations are key. When you are doing the mining and minerals bill, for example, there were so many stakeholders that needed to be consulted. Their views needed to be artisanal and small-scale miners, people in whose land there have been minerals. All those issues.
So
Even the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, which is an expert in that area, had written a statement about how
to date is what? Second.
Yes.
Now, the team that was supposed to go and meet the FATCA were supposed to leave, I think, on the 29th. Then another for the meeting, which is on the 3rd, which is tomorrow. To carry those
Exactly.
carry those bills to say, you know what, we have taken this one, we have taken this one.
We have complied.
Yes. So if we were to follow what the advice you're
Bureaucracy.
providing, is that by now we would still be talking. Maybe meeting those groups of people, different committees doing their thing. This was it was not a normal environment. Because now, if they had gone without all these bills passed, they would say, because now it was 2 years, they said, and they had warned them, this is your last chance. You come back when you have not done this thing, we plug you, you join North Korea, and you join the other group. So that's why personally I was very lenient to say, if it means burning the candles, let's do it. Let's save the country first. Because even if you have a quarrel, you first deal the bigger issue. Saving the country and making sure we don't damage ourselves, we move into the blacklist. So that now when we come here, other bills, what you propose actually would follow them. If somebody wants to go to court, even if the court questions the thing, we would have saved the country. We will now have the necessary time to do the work. But in terms of the meeting, they would have seen that there is already a law passed in Uganda. So for me, I think that's my
That is patriotism.
my take on it. Any other? It means bending the rule. We did not break the law. We just bent the rules. Like what he's saying, you can suspend certain rules, which is allowed in our rules. Certain provisions of the of parliamentary rules and procedures, and deal with the matters at hand.
Okay. Tim, I don't know if you have
just probably, because in this scenario, actually, it was not for the parliament. It was largely by the executive and the manner in which. Imagine, Honourable says 2 years.
2 years.
That is a substantial time.
If I was the president, I would look for these chaps wherever they are, and I say, how can you put the? And by the way, the president was waiting to put his signature and said, guys, go. Now you just imagine. And Parliament, we did our work. So next time we have a conversation with him, we'll say, boss, who are these hawks who can't finish stuff in time and really puts the country at the precipice of really falling into the deep.
Yes, so and to that end, it affects the image of Parliament.
not to the people that are delaying
Not
to
the
bring
people,
the
because
work
this was not at the people who passed tell you that it was patriotism. We did this for the country.
Yes.
The people who failed to bring them to those who are supposed to pass it failed.
Yes.
And so to that end, and those are 7 bills of the 11.
Yes.
So you have 4 bills. So in order to probably also look into how those bills are considered, then you may want to choose to look at the substantive bills, not the 7.
Yes.
But by and large, I think that in this situation, the Parliament has to insist that the individuals who failed to do that, on top of the apology, I think there has to be measures to avoid the same happening and affecting the nation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the last issue I wanted us to discuss was absenteeism. The speaker even threatened to issue warning letters
Yes.
to the people that are not doing what they're supposed to do. I think there's a review, some sort of what's the word? They checked performance of July, attendance of July, and about 154 MPs did not scored 0 attendance for plenary. 154, like did not even attend once. So on average, it was higher, but those who didn't even attend once were 154. So you go to committees. I think I looked at some of them, like PAC, even committees that are chaired by the opposition, where you think there would be some level of seriousness, where you'd have about 16 members out of the 44 who did not attend even a single sitting in the area that was in the period that was reviewed, and the many other committees. So that, I think that's what brought about that. And citizens are really bleeding. That we spend a lot of money on 528 MPs, but then you have a house where
Is it not 39?
528, I think.
More than that, I think.
No, that's the number.
That's the number.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have some decisions which are passed without quorum. When you have what exactly will be the problem?
Let me start with myself. I'm a very active member of Parliament. In the last ratings, I think I was amongst the top 50. So which means I'm not doing badly. And then I'm an active member in the budget, in the finance committee, and also in the plenary. I understand where the speaker was coming from. Is that there are now people in Parliament, MPs, that you wonder why they came to Parliament. Somebody would stay away for almost 5 months, 4 months, and then you just see them. You ask, where have you been? Now, I think we need to strengthen our rules and the laws governing how we perform work in Parliament. One of which they say if you miss for 15 days, then you can be punished, penalized. And the only recall, I think, which is in the Constitution is that the constituents, the voters, are the only ones who are empowered to remove a member of Parliament, and the process is there. Then the one which is there also is a failure to report to the IGG on the wealth if you are taken to court. Now, this one of non-attendance, I don't know, I'm not well conversant with it. What kind of sanction can the speaker provide? Because if the MPs know that the sanction that the speaker will met out will not remove me from my seat, will not affect my salary, even if you chase me and say, look, the punishment is you will not appear in the plenary. Some people
It can affect your seat in the next time.
Yeah. Others have their ways of submitting. It's just like dropping a tortoise in water. If somebody who has been absent and you said, okay, I don't want to see you in the Parliament for the next 2 weeks, the person is going to go to Bahamas and sit. So we need to find a solution. I saw Honourable Daudi Kavanda saying that parliamentarians should be paid according to the attendance and contribution. It's very difficult to monitor that. But also, I think we are coming from a COVID period where entering Parliament was regulated. There was a roster where you find the names for the day. Those who are attending the plenary, you find the names are shared. And then because of COVID, people were sitting there were some spaces that were left. But also that caveat was removed by Deputy Speaker, Honourable Terego, when he actually said, you know what, we can now attend. But that plenary...
And also that time there was a provision of online.
Oh yes, online. And the rules, the speaker explained it and said, you have to apply in advance, saying that you'll be online, and then they will connect you, they will know that you're online and so forth. They have the technology to do that. So maybe we have to find ways of doing these things, because the rooms, the plenary space is not enough for all of us. We are many, over 500. Where are we going to sit? That's number one. The presence of Parliament also is not enough. There's not enough space, sitting place. So sometimes people come and the house is full, so you find others loitering in the corridors, others are seated in the prisons just watching from watching the screen. So we can find a better way of dealing the matter. To do electronic attendance, and then possibly when Rocco finishes finally that big
If it
does finish the new parliament, then we'll have enough space for everybody. Then that is where now you can really police attendance. But the speaker has made suggestion, but I think you can name and shame. She has a lot of instruments to use. Name and shame. If your name is mentioned by the speaker that this MP does not attend parliament, the electorate will see. You're going to have problems with the electorate in the next. So we need to look at the appropriate sanction that will really make people more responsive in terms of attending parliament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honourable Obigah.
Thank you. Just as my colleague has said, the space in parliament is not enough. We used to, you would be moved when you know that today you're on the roster to be there. But of course, my people of Terego sent me to be in parliament, period. This roster thing, I gave it a deaf ear. When I want to be in parliament, I'm in parliament. But the challenge is, at times you stand 9 times. There are people who are not used to this kind of thing. I'm a honourable member of parliament. Now do I stand? And speaker has a challenge. There are too many people who stand.
And she doesn't. She don't catch her eye.
Yeah. So others say, let me just go. But there are people like us who insist and persist. So also now that if you're spoken at least once in a day, do not stand again. But the Chemonges will bring this, just trying to cause commotion so that they can be picked 3, 4, 5, 7 times. Must we all do that? Procedure, information, and the things they bring.
I will bring Chemonges on this show next time with you. So that when he's here and he defends himself now that he's not here.
But Chemonges speaks every day.
Every day
for him, it is a non-factor. I think the speaker also knows. It's either order or procedure. He must speak.
But does he? Because what I don't understand is, does Chemonges speaking every day or so many times in a day affect the speaking of other people, or the other people don't get up to speak?
No. I think. Sorry, my sister. The thing is, Honourable Chemonges is a senior parliamentarian.
Member of parliament, yeah.
So when he stands up, there's a sense in which the speaker would grant him his request because he's a senior. People like Honourable Nandala Mafabi, when he stands up, he will be looked at kindly.
Oh, so you newcomers are the ones.
Honourable Sarah Pendi. So there are people, there are seniors in that.
There's in those things.
So there are seniors in the house.
So it's hard for a newcomer to catch the speaker's eye.
Yeah. So there are people who are complaining that for me, I've stood up several times in that house and I'm not been picked. So I have no time to go into the house. So that's what I'm hearing in the corridor. Other people are complaining that, however much I try, I never catch I will never catch the speaker's eye. And that's why Honourable Terego said he was somewhere in the north. And there's an Honourable MP whom he didn't mention, who actually made allegation that, for me, I was scored badly because the speaker does not pick me, even if I stand up several times. So then he started saying, now you stand up and talk. So I think also the burden falls on the speakers to see that when people are in the house, there are some people who have not spoken. And you should not allow the same people maybe to speak. You should be able to allow some person who has never spoken.
Just remember when we were eulogizing Olanya.
Yes.
I think some of us died silently.
Oh, you didn't?
For me, I stood up like 32 times. I was not picked. But of course, I understand. It was
that
so
time,
So, I'll just take it easy. Tomorrow I come. But I'm not like others.
The others
there are MPs who
take
carry
it personally.
themselves, you don't know that house really. The people who really carry themselves, how can my constituency say we saw you stand several times? There are also, there's some.
So what you're saying, Honourable Obigah, is that some people have gotten frustrated.
Yes,
And said,
That's true.
even if I don't go, even if I go, I will not,
I will not
to
be
say
picked.
anything.
Yeah, why should I?
So
go
we
there?
need to get that class also to come. I don't mind Chemonges speaking several times, but it's good to balance the boat. We are all
But
for
it's
the
not
speaker,
Chemonges' responsibility
It
to
is
balance
not.
the
It is
boat.
not. What I'm saying is,
Even when we were in school, the teacher would know that, no, for you have spoken so many times,
Wait.
and he would only pick you when others are not standing up, because you'll have that sharp one and confident when others are very timid and are not getting up. Now, if that is the case, you can't blame Chemonges. If the case is that he's picked when others are standing up, still, you can only blame the person who is picking him over and over against.
one time Nandala was
a
picked
new
6
face.
times behind me, but I was standing. You see the frustration
Yes,
people go
yes,
through,
yes.
and how many people are there? I remember one of my colleagues said, no, let me just go. This is too much for me.
Okay.
And she went. Me, I stayed. And later, now at around 7:30, it's when I was picked. So I also say that let MPs learn to insist and wait up to when Parliament closes.
We don't
Then
have
it
the same
closes.
levels of
tolerance.
tolerance, persistence, and
Yeah.
perseverance. So Timothy, what does this now tell you, what we are getting here? How can it be resolved, or how can the speaker balance that?
Yeah, I did
that,
complete ROCO. That work of ROCO should be completed so that we sit. Then more time. Maybe we should, I don't know, we should have time like, should we have morning sessions or, of course, committee work? We should have both. The speaker should have eyes both on committee work and on plenary.
Plenary.
Some of us, at times, you are still in committee work and plenary is moving on. So if I am in plenary, the speaker should understand I'm not here. But other people, other MPs should try to build confidence. I still have colleagues who say, but Rose, how do you stand up? I find it heavy after standing twice. We still have timidness. Of course, we have different levels of MPs here.
No,
they say basic, senior 6. Maybe next is level of MPs. Can't we go for
it's
degree
natural.
holders?
It's natural to. This affects your self-esteem and confidence, that you are getting up and another person is chosen over you over and over again. It will affect your confidence in what you're going to say. You think that maybe they think, I won't say anything that adds value. So Tim, I was asking how if you're the speaker, for example, and you have to deal with 528, I think, or 29 MPs, how would you balance that to ensure that whoever wishes to contribute gets a chance?
So Agatha, first I think it's good to realize that close to 70%, much of the work is done at the committee level. And so I think that with our current dynamics of Parliament, much of the efforts has to be there. 2, if you had all the members of Parliament, the members of Parliament, the direct elected 529, together with the ministers, you are like 550 something there. Even if you were to allocate each a minute, they wouldn't speak in the whole plenary session, which has an average of 3 to 4 hours. And so it's extremely hard. With the dynamics now, with what members of Parliament are raising concern, that catching the speaker's eye is its work on itself. To catch the eye, and so that also affects the manner. And so the dynamics are a bit tricky, and also that affects the quality of work. To the extent that you find that let's say Honourable Obigah here wants to contribute on a report for finance, which has been read by the finance committee. Within that limit, which is maybe they give it an hour together with the debate, she may not get the time. They ask her, no, you will contribute on the one on human rights. To that extent, you find that even what she had wanted to contribute to that specific report, or if it's a report of a bill, it end up not being considered. And so to that, you find that it's a whole thing. But for me, the drawing board comes back to the number of MPs we have. I think there's a concern that the number is a bit big. It's big. And so that is where probably we have to first look. Why do we need all these MPs?
No.
Probably it has to be reduced.
One constituency MP and one woman MP per district.
I'm one of the MPs that would support a reduction of MPs.
You're not
It's too
talking.
many.
There are too many.
300 there would be reasonable,
Yeah.
but not over 500. For what?
Sure.
Yeah.
So to encourage attendance, but also to encourage participation, it needs a skill which the speaker has to employ, to the extent that you have each of the MPs speak, but also you have senior members of parliament. You have the Cecilias of Gual, who on top of being members of parliament, they have a specific privilege for which the presiding officer will always
No,
have over
but
them.
actually, I think that should work to the contrary. That the senior members, because they have had many chances before to speak, for example, Honourable Cecilia Ogwal, who has been in Parliament for over 20 years, you should now give a chance to
The younger ones.
to the newcomers so that the country can also see what they can offer. That's what I think. But it seems it works differently. They say a senior one must speak no matter how many times.
Because there are some MPs, we are told, that they carve out a sub-county. One sub-county to make it a constituency for them.
Yes.
Do we really have to balkanize the country in such a manner?
The politics of Honourable Obigah's
No,
party.
in fact,
Yes.
this I want to reduce my argument to 11th Parliament. To be an insult to this country if 11th Parliament ever creates any single constituency.
No, we shouldn't create.
We should never. And two, we should have
you should
one
work to reduce
constituency
it.
MP
Yes.
We should-
and one district MP. Much as we have a number of districts. Let's there's some districts that have 5 MPs. One woman MP, the rest have now created themselves some cocoons, so that they can appear in parliament. This is wrong. Let's be really honest to the
It's called
taxpayer.
gerrymandering. They've done a lot of
There's some
gerrymandering.
MPs already, they are feeling pressure. And they say, me, I'm going to talk to Mzee because I'm a minister. They want to boot me. I must create for myself the other side. This will not happen in Terego. This is total madness. We should continue.
So still we go back to Parliament, which has passed these constituencies over and over. New
But you think they are going to support us that we need one woman MP and one constituency?
But the good news is there is
But no more
a woman
creation.
MP who is coming up with the private members bill to reduce the size of parliament.
Very good, we shall be there.
I can unless,
a brave one.
but they have been harassing her.
Of course.
Not to
Actually,
come
she's
up.
a constituency MP.
She's a constituency MP.
Yes.
So she's actually should stand firm and really come and let it be defeated on the floor of
She's
the house.
very brave.
Yes, because people really don't know. So, and I've talked to a few people, and I said, I think she's doing the right thing. Let's give her a chance to do it. But there are a good number of MPs who are against, because they're the ones who are having the territorial thing. This is
It's
sub-county
you
thing.
MPs that have benefited from this gerrymandering. Some people probably think that if they hadn't added something, I wouldn't be in Parliament.
Yeah,
And some,
Gender balance,
some
gender
are
equality.
specifically created for those people.
yeah.
Let's conclude, Honourable. Continue with your concluding remarks, and we end the show.
I think we've discussed a number of things. The issue of our economy and the ability for it to generate revenue so that we increase our tax to GDP ratio from the current 13% to 18% or 20%, which actually, if we achieve that, it would mean that our appetite for debt will be muted, and over a period of time, we will then be able to balance our budget without relying on the donor money. So I'm really requesting the people on the side of the executive to make sure that when Parliament plays its role of approving for loans and appropriating the budget, they must make sure that the resources of the nation is used frugally and correctly to generate wealth. And so that we invest money in the key areas of the economy so that Uganda can actually grow. And I also want to caution our brothers from Ministry of Finance that please leave Bank of Uganda to manage inflation using the relevant monetary instruments that are available to them. The fiscal discipline which you're bringing in will basically clog the economy, will stagnate us, and will not make us grow. You can't have your cake and eat it. So I think we need to allow, make money available so that we really fund the budget which we have passed for the financial year 2022-2023. I look forward to the next phase of the budget discussions, and hopefully PDM will be funded so that the majority of our people in the parishes receive the money that we had promised them for a long time.
Okay.
I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable. Honourable Obigah.
Thank you. My brother has said others. I like to go straight to environment. I'll urge all Ugandans to plant trees. At least every Ugandan must plant 200 trees before this season ends. If you fail this season, the next season. Because we are from the frying pan into fire. If forest cover is only 10%, honestly, what are we doing?
Must be about 8 now.
Yeah, so we really need to think about our environment. If we destroy it, we shall have to destroy ourselves. Lastly, I encourage my colleagues to attend Parliament. At least attend plenary. If you can't attend plenary, attend committee. Committee is where every...
This committee, you can't have an excuse of I've not been.
Yeah, you can't. Let's attend committee because that's where work is done and that's where you build confidence. Yeah, members, government has put money on us. Taxpayers' money is being put on us.
Our money.
There must be value for money other than just remaining there. Get yourself, collect yourself, get to Parliament. And lastly, to all Ugandans, do not mind the bills that have been passed recently into law. We are thoroughly done. Trust us, you can go through them. You'll not find anything big to change. We love you. For the people of Terego, Mama is there for you always.
Tim.
Thank you so much.
Terego.
Mama is there.
Thank you so much, Agatha. First, mine is to just remind the public that the roles of members of parliament is usually restricted within the constitution, and those include representation, oversight, budgeting, and legislation, which is key, and we must hold them accountable to that end. The other roles that including building of schools, and these are the roles that they find themselves in. Those are additional roles that they add on to themselves. But to emphasize that this is our country, the legislators must be put to task. We've given them the mandate and ensure that they deliver. They help us to create a country that we can all live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you to the panel for coming. I must really, I feel happy this was a good panel. I've been struggling to get you people to come to the show because you are not absent only in Parliament, but even in shows where you are required to, to really give a contribution. You have. So thank you for coming. And, you know, I think for me, I'll end by talking about the state of the economy and the indebtedness we discussed. The committee was concerned that the rate of debt accumulation is way higher than the rate of economic growth at 22% on one hand and 3% on the other. And this job falls on Parliament, that you are supposed to look at what are we borrowing for? And that's when history will exonerate you and say you are not part of what is happening. Recently, I had a former MP here, Honourable Paul Miru, formerly Ginger East, and he said that Parliament, the only thing Parliament can't do is to change a woman into a man. But it has powers to do every other thing, and that's true.
And he was there, what did he do?
He was outnumbered. He was in both in the 9th and 10th Parliament.
Yes.
He was outnumbered.
Actually, our biggest challenge has come from
there.
Yeah.
But
we are battling with those people's mess.
What we are saying is that if Parliament looked into the issues that are and maybe became put their foot on the ground and stood up to the bullies that come from, would maybe resolve many of the issues that we are dealing with now. Thank you for being with us. From us, it's a nice weekend. We'll see you again next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you.